Welcome, Commander, to the familiar yet alien-feeling universe of Zerok. If you're coming from beyond all reason and are picking up Zerok, this video is for you. Zerok shares a lot of DNA with Bar, but there are a number of differences that can trip you up if you're not prepared. So let's dive into what you need to know. If you want to follow along with this video and experiment in-game, start a skirmish match against an inactive AI by going to Single Player, Skirmish, Advanced, and add an inactive AI just like you would in Bar. Once you get into game, you can choose between different types of commanders. This does not mean you choose a faction, because Zerok doesn't have factions, it has factories. So let's start with that. After you place your commander, you can instantly place down a factory using the free coupon. You can use it on whatever factory you want except for the Strider hub. There are multiple categories of factories, like bots, vehicles, spiders, air and naval, just like your bot lab or vehicle plant in Bar. And between these different categories they are organized by style, so you have one that focuses on cloaked units, one on shield units, or one on amphibious units for instance. Important to note, Zerok has a flat tech tree, meaning you don't have tiered constructors, and can technically build a super weapon as your very first building of the match. Of course you're not going to afford that, so don't even try. Just like in Bar, your units cost metal, energy and build power, but they are all spent at the same rate. For example, if something costs 80 metal, it also costs 80 energy and 80 build power. So in a factory with 10 build power, it will be constructed in 8 seconds, assuming you have the eco to back that up. This loses some of the nuances, like solars only costing metal in Bar, but this does make it a lot easier to manage, allowing you to focus more on strategy and destroying the enemy. Another big change in the economy is that Zerok does not have metal makers, but rather it has an overdrive grid where energy structures that are placed close to metal extractors use that excess energy in order to make more metal. This system incentivizes expansion and taking territory, since your eco scales with the number of maxes. With an interconnected grid, it will automatically optimize it to make you the most metal. Zerok is all about expand, 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 but to do so you will face the enemy, which means that you will need units to engage them. Zerok doesn't really have damage formulas, like plus 50% damage to commanders or minus 90% damage to submarines, and it also doesn't have flanking damage. Units counter each other by weapon types, speed, range and positioning, but not through artificial formulas. The same goes for self-destruction advantages. No matter how the thing explodes, it will always deal the same amount of damage. Of course, it might still be good to time it yourself to cause the most destruction possible, but you don't get an advantage in terms of damage, range or anything like that. Similar to this is that even though a unit can get an icon above it that it has made cost, there is no such thing as a unit rank giving it better stats. The unit is simply the unit, which makes it easier to judge whether a fight will be advantageous or not, since you know that your enemy will be fighting with the same quality materials you are. When you do engage the enemy, you will participate in a sort of rock, paper, scissors, with the three main classes being raiders, riots and skirmishers, where raiders are fast and good at dodging, riots blast large groups of raiders to smithereens, and skirmishers pick off riots from long range. Of course there are other unit types like artillery, assault and support, but we will not be covering those in this video. AI is an area where Zerok really shines, and we're not talking about the buzzword AI for LLMs or neural networks. I'm talking about unit AI, for when you give an attack move command to a unit, the equivalent of a fight command in Bar. Units will try to dodge enemy shots, and skirmishers will keep at range, and they will even dodge in and out of range to prevent taking damage if possible, for instance against static defenses. With the knowledge you just acquired, you can already start fighting the good fight. However, there are of course a lot more differences between Bar and Zerok. In this section I will cover some of the things you are likely going to experience when in game, or that you will probably try to look for, but cannot find. One of those is wind. In Zerok, wind is always more efficient than solar, both in energy and metal generation. However, just like in Bar, it's a variable energy source, so when you rely on wind, you have the chance to stall. You can mostly prevent this by building wind at higher elevations. The wind floor increases when they are placed higher, making them more efficient and making them way less dependent on the current wind strength. This is why generally it's only viable to build wind when the wind floor is 0.4 or higher. Placing a wind turbine on water turns it into a tidal generator, generating a stable output that's always more efficient than solar. Solar does have the advantage of armoring up under fire and having a lot more HP. That of course makes them a lot more resilient, and their stable output also makes them very reliable. Cloaked units work differently too. Cloak doesn't just hide the unit from visual, it also hides the unit's radar signature, meaning that a unit is truly stealthy. Just like in bar, it is possible to uncover it by being close to it, and it also decloaks when getting hit or when it is performing an action other than moving, like attacking, constructing or reclaiming. Your commander does not start out with a rapid fire D-gun. It starts off with a normal laser weapon, but can be upgraded with all kinds of different upgrades. For instance, you can get a resurrection module, extra drones, a personal or area cloak, and the same goes for shields. You can also upgrade the weapons, you can even get a manual fire weapon, and you can even give it a manual fire disintegrator gun, which is somewhat similar to the D-gun in bar. However, it does not one-shot everything. The lack of a D-gun does make your commander a lot more vulnerable than in bar. However, you will not lose the game if you lose your commander. It will likely be a major setback, since you will permanently lose out on eco, and you will lose out on a formidable unit, especially if you had it upgraded. But you don't instantly lose. On the topic of weapons, most weapons in Zerok don't change behavior depending on range, like lasers do in bar. The main exception to this is heat ray. You'll mostly encounter it on the radar from the rover factory. Damage from heat ray drops off linearly with distance, dealing significantly less damage at max range, so get all up in your enemy's personal space with them. Weapon types do have different trajectories, changing their interaction. So some might have a ballistic trajectory, meaning their maximum range increases when firing downwards, while other weapons might have a spherical range, meaning their absolute range is always the same, but effectively means their range is greatest when level with the enemy. Another weapon type that works slightly differently is torpedoes, since they are able to hit hovercraft. Zerok also has a bunch of features that bar currently does not include, such as terraforming, jump bots, gravity propulsion devices, or status effects like slowdown or disarm. And of course, just like in bar, we do have EMP. In our case, lightning rifles fall under EMP. So that's it. I hope this video helped smoothen out the transition from bar to Zerok. But if there are still some questions or you have feedback, please put it in the comment section so that I or someone else can respond to it or help you out. But of course, most importantly, good luck, have fun, Commander.